What if you traveled through time and made it back alive, but your body didn't come back with you? Imagine being trapped inside flesh that no longer belongs to your timeline, a mind from the future locked in a body from the past. Sounds impossible, right? But the 10 cases you're about to hear suggest otherwise. These are real accounts of people who claim they survived time travel, only to become prisoners in their own bodies. Let's begin. Imagine going to sleep as a 67-year-old woman and waking up in a body 4 decades younger. Sounds like a dream, right? But what if your mind stayed 67? What if you remembered everything from your future life, your children, your husband's death, even a global pandemic that wouldn't happen for another 40 years? And what if you were trapped in that younger body with no way to prove any of it was real? This is the terrifying story of Margaret Holloway, and it is absolutely chilling. In March 2019, Margaret was a retired nurse living alone in Leeds, England. Her husband had passed away 3 years earlier. Her children had grown and moved away. She spent her evenings reading, drinking tea, and listening to the rain against her window. On the night of March 14th, a violent thunderstorm rolled through Yorkshire. Margaret remembers the lightning flashing so bright it turned her bedroom white. She pulled the covers over her head and eventually drifted off to sleep. When she opened her eyes, everything had changed. She was lying in a different bed. The wallpaper was yellow with small flowers, a pattern she hadn't seen in decades. The furniture was old but familiar. And when she sat up and looked at her hands, they were smooth, unwrinkled, young. She stumbled to a mirror and nearly collapsed. Staring back at her was her 27-year-old self. Same face she remembered from photographs. Same body she hadn't seen since 1979. Because that's exactly where she was. 1979. Margaret ran downstairs and found her mother cooking breakfast. Her father sat at the table reading the newspaper. Both of them had been dead for over 20 years. She screamed. She cried. She grabbed her mother and held her so tight that her mother called for a doctor, convinced something was terribly wrong. And something was wrong. Margaret's body was 27 years old, but her mind was still 67. She remembered everything: her wedding in 1983, the birth of her children, her husband's cancer diagnosis, the lockdowns during COVID-19. She remembered all of it, but none of it had happened yet. When she tried to explain, her mother grew frightened. The family doctor arrived and recommended psychiatric evaluation. Margaret quickly learned the most devastating lesson of her experience. No one would ever believe her, so she stopped talking about it. She decided to simply live, but living meant watching her entire life unfold a second time, knowing exactly what would happen and being completely powerless to change it. She knew she would meet her husband, Thomas, in 1983 at a bookstore in Manchester, and she did. She fell in love with him again, even though she already carried the grief of his death in 2016. She gave birth to her 3 children again, held them again, raised them again. But the joy was poisoned by knowledge. She knew her youngest son would die in a car accident in 2007. She knew it was coming. She tried everything to stop it. She begged him not to drive that night. She hid his keys. She screamed at him until he thought she had lost her mind. He drove anyway, and he died anyway. Margaret describes that night as the moment she understood the full horror of her situation. Time wasn't something she could change. It was something she was forced to watch, again and again. Every tragedy she had already survived, she had to survive once more. And this time, she saw it coming. Researchers who studied her case in 2019, after she began speaking publicly, noted something remarkable in old medical records from 1979. A young woman admitted for psychological distress displayed what doctors called an unusual presentation. She possessed detailed knowledge of events that had not yet occurred. They dismissed it as delusion. But those records exist, they're dated, and they describe exactly what Margaret claims happened. Today, Margaret Holloway is 67 years old again, but by her count, she has lived for 107 years. She has buried her husband twice. She has lost her son twice. And she says the worst part isn't the grief. It's knowing that she was never able to save anyone. Her body was a prison, and time was the warden who never let her escape. Now picture this. You're a 32-year-old pilot flying a routine cargo transport over the Nevada desert. The sky is clear, the instruments are steady, and then, without warning, everything goes green. A light surrounds your aircraft so bright you can't see your own hands. Your skin starts burning, your bones ache like they're being crushed from the inside. And when you finally land 12 minutes later, you step out of the cockpit and nobody recognizes you. Because somehow, impossibly, you've aged 30 years in less than a quarter of an hour. This is the disturbing case of Captain David Mercer, and it will make you question everything you think you know about time. In September 1987, David Mercer was an experienced commercial pilot working for a private freight company based in Las Vegas. He had logged thousands of flight hours. He knew the Nevada skies like the back of his hand. On the morning of September 19th, he took off on a routine delivery run to Phoenix, carrying electronics equipment in a small twin-engine cargo plane. The weather was perfect. Visibility was unlimited. There was absolutely no reason to expect anything unusual. At approximately 14,000 feet, somewhere over the empty desert northwest of Kingman, Arizona, Mercer's instruments suddenly failed. Every gauge dropped to zero, the radio filled with static, and then the light appeared. He described it later as a pulsating green glow that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It surrounded the aircraft completely. The air inside the cockpit grew thick and heavy. Mercer said he couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even blink. He felt his skin tightening. His joints screamed with pain. His vision blurred, and he heard a sound like 1,000 voices whispering in a language he couldn't understand. Then, just as suddenly as it started, everything stopped. The instruments flickered back to life. The light vanished. And Mercer found himself descending toward the Phoenix airport with no memory of how he'd gotten there. When he landed and climbed out of the plane, the ground crew froze. They didn't approach him. They called security instead, because the man standing in front of them wasn't the young pilot they had waved off that morning. His hair was white. His face was deeply lined with wrinkles. His hands trembled with the weakness of old age. David Mercer looked like he was in his mid-60s. Medical examination confirmed the impossible. His cellular structure, organ function, bone density, and skin elasticity were all consistent with a man approximately 62 years old. But his flight log showed he had only been airborne for 47 minutes. The anomalous instrument readings lasted exactly 12 minutes. In those 12 minutes, David Mercer's body had aged 3 decades. His mind, however, had not. Mercer retained all his memories, his personality, his cognitive patterns. He still thought like a 32-year-old. He still felt like a 32-year-old. But he looked in the mirror and saw his grandfather staring back. His wife came to the hospital and walked right past him, not recognizing her own husband. His children thought he was a stranger. One of his sons later said it was like meeting his father's ghost while his father was still alive. Doctors couldn't explain it. Physicists were baffled. The FAA quietly closed the investigation after 3 months with no conclusions. But Mercer knew what he had experienced. He said the light had pulled him through time somehow, that he had felt years passing inside that green glow, even though the clock showed only minutes. He described it as being stretched, like his body was dragged through decades while his mind stayed anchored in a single moment. David Mercer spent the remaining years of his life begging someone to study him, to understand what had happened, to prevent it from happening to anyone else. He died in 1994 at the chronological age of 39, but biologically, he was nearly 70. His death certificate lists heart failure, but those who knew him said he didn't die of old age. He died of being old in a life that wasn't finished yet. His body had raced ahead without him, and he spent 7 years trying to catch up to a finish line that had already passed. What if you died and woke up at the beginning of the same week, and then died again, and woke up again? What if this happened not twice, not 10 times, but over 800 times? What if you were trapped in an endless loop of living the same 7 days, dying at the end and starting over with every single memory intact? This is the nightmare that Lucas Olivea claims he has been living since 2003. And if his story is true, it is one of the most psychologically terrifying cases of temporal imprisonment ever documented. Lucas was a normal 16-year-old boy living in São Paulo, Brazil. He went to school. He played football with his friends. He argued with his parents about homework and curfews. On the morning of June 14, 2003, he woke up in his small bedroom, ate breakfast with his family, and began what should have been an ordinary week. 7 days later, on June 21st, He was crossing a busy street near his home when a city bus ran a red light and struck him. He remembers the impact. He remembers the pain. He remembers the darkness that swallowed him completely. And then he woke up in his bed on June 14th at exactly 7:42 in the morning. At first, Lucas thought it was a vivid dream, a hallucination caused by trauma. But as the day unfolded, he realized with growing horror that everything was happening exactly as it had before. The same conversations, the same events, the same weather. He tried to convince himself it was déjà vu, that his mind was playing tricks. But on June 21st, no matter what he did, he found himself at that same intersection, at the same moment. The bus came, he died, and he woke up again. Lucas says he has now lived through this week 847 times. That's over 900 days of subjective experience compressed into a body that has physically existed for only 7 days, repeated endlessly. His parents noticed something was wrong in 2008, when Lucas began predicting events with impossible accuracy. He knew what people would say before they said it. He knew about accidents before they happened. He described news stories days before they aired. Psychologists were brought in. Tests were conducted. And slowly, the horrifying truth became undeniable. Lucas appeared to possess genuine knowledge of the future, but only within the boundaries of his 7-day loop. He has tried everything to escape. He has stayed home on June 21st. He has left the city entirely. He has warned the bus driver, called the police, even attempted to end his life before the bus could reach him. Nothing works. The loop always finds a way to close. If he avoids the bus, something else kills him. A heart attack, a fall, a random act of violence. The universe, he says, refuses to let him reach June 22nd. What makes this case even more disturbing is the physical evidence. Lucas's body has not aged since 2003. He is still biologically 16 years old. His parents, meanwhile, have grown older by 2 decades. His younger sister, who was 12 when the loop began, is now in her 30s. She is older than her older brother. She has graduated university, built a career, started a family. Lucas has watched all of it happen, from inside a body frozen in time, carrying memories that span more than 16 years of conscious existence. Researchers who have studied Lucas theorize that his consciousness became untethered during the moment of his original death, creating what they call a temporal recursion loop. His mind travels backward at the moment of death while retaining all accumulated memories. His body resets, his awareness does not. He is a 16-year-old boy with the mind of a man who has lived over 16 years in a prison made of 7 days. Lucas says the worst part is not the dying. He has grown numb to that. The worst part is the waking. Every single morning, for 847 cycles, he opens his eyes in the same bed, sees the same ceiling, hears the same sounds, and knows that nothing he does will ever change the ending. His body is not just a prison, it is a torture chamber, and time is the torturer who never stops, never rests, and never lets him escape. Imagine being launched into space for a 3-week mission and coming back to find that your children don't recognize you anymore. Not because you look different, but because you've become someone else entirely. Your body is the same, your face is the same, but your mind has lived through 11 years that nobody else remembers. This is the haunting story of Viktor Dementev, a Soviet cosmonaut who claims he experienced over a decade of isolation in just 23 days. And his case remains one of the most disturbing accounts of temporal displacement ever recorded. In March 1971, Viktor Dementev was selected for a classified solo mission as part of the Soviet space program. He was 34 years old, a decorated pilot, and one of the most psychologically resilient candidates in the cosmonaut corps. The mission parameters were simple. He would orbit Earth in an experimental capsule designed to test new propulsion systems. The expected duration was 23 days, standard telemetry, routine observations, nothing unusual, but what happened inside that capsule was anything but routine. Soviet records declassified in 2004 revealed that Dementev's post-mission debriefings contained deeply troubling testimony. He claimed that time inside the spacecraft moved differently than time on Earth. While mission control tracked 23 days of orbital flight, Viktor experienced something far longer. He described living through approximately 4,015 days of conscious existence. That's exactly 11 years. He kept a journal. He performed maintenance routines. He conducted scientific observations and recorded his thoughts in meticulous detail. He watched Earth rotate beneath him thousands upon thousands of times. He celebrated birthdays alone. He talked to himself to stay sane. He marked the passage of time by scratching lines into the wall of his capsule. When he finally received the signal to return, he had filled 7 notebooks with entries spanning more than a decade. The journals were never recovered. Soviet authorities claimed they didn't exist. But Victor could quote entire passages from memory. He recited entries describing his emotional deterioration, his longing for his family, his gradual acceptance that he might never go home. Psychologists noted that his recollections were not fragmented or dreamlike. They were linear, coherent, and devastatingly detailed. When Victor landed, he was immediately placed in quarantine, not because of biological contamination, but because something was clearly wrong. He couldn't connect with his wife. He looked at her like she was a stranger. His children ran to embrace him, and he flinched. To his mind, he had been gone for over a decade. His son, who was 8 when he launched, seemed impossibly young. His daughter's voice sounded unfamiliar. Victor later said it felt like meeting actors pretending to be his family. The faces were right, but the memories didn't match. His wife reported that he seemed like a different person wearing Victor's body. He was distant, melancholy, deeply withdrawn. He spoke about things that hadn't happened. He referenced anniversaries that didn't exist. He described watching his children grow up through a window in space, narrating their imagined lives to himself just to feel connected. But the children he imagined and the children standing in front of him were not the same. The gap between his internal timeline and external reality was simply too vast to bridge. Soviet psychologists diagnosed him with a severe dissociative condition, attributing his experience to isolation-induced psychosis. But Victor insisted until his death in 1989 that everything he described had actually happened. He said time and orbit stretched like rubber, that seconds became hours, that days became years, and that when he finally returned, he landed in a world that had barely moved while he had lived an entire second life. Researchers now theorize that Victor may have experienced what they call relativistic consciousness dilation. Under certain unexplained conditions, the mind perceives time at a vastly different rate than the body experiences it. The soul ages while the flesh remains frozen. If this theory is correct, then Victor Dementev didn't just complete a 23-day mission. He served an 11-year sentence in solitary confinement, thousands of miles above a planet that forgot to wait for him. And that brings us to our next case, which is even more unsettling. 73% of viewers watching right now aren't subscribed. If these stories are leaving you speechless, hit subscribe, because the next one might just change the way you see reality forever. What if you woke up one day and didn't recognize your own hands? What if you looked in the mirror and saw a face that felt completely foreign, like someone else was wearing your skin? Now imagine that feeling never going away. Imagine living every single day convinced that the body you inhabit belongs to someone else. This is the deeply unsettling case of Dr. Eleanor Vance, a renowned neurosurgeon who claims that after dying for 4 minutes, she returned to a body that isn't hers. And her story will make you question the very nature of identity itself. In October 2011, Dr. Eleanor Vance was performing a routine procedure at a prestigious hospital in Boston. She was 48 years old, at the peak of her career, known for her steady hands and brilliant mind. Halfway through the surgery, without any warning, her heart stopped. She collapsed in the operating room. The surgical team immediately began resuscitation efforts while another surgeon took over the patient. For exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds, Eleanor Vance was clinically dead. When they brought her back, she opened her eyes and asked a question that stunned everyone in the room. Whose hands are these? The nurses thought she was disoriented from the cardiac arrest. They reassured her, told her she was safe, showed her that she was in the recovery ward. But Eleanor kept staring at her hands like they belonged to a stranger. When they brought her a mirror, she recoiled. She said the woman looking back at her was not Eleanor Vance. The face was wrong. The eyes were wrong. Everything was wrong. She described it as being uploaded into the wrong hardware, like her mind had been placed inside a body she had never seen before. DNA testing confirmed she was Eleanor Vance. Psychological evaluation confirmed her memories were authentic and intact. She could recall her childhood, her medical training, her patients, her family. Every detail of her life was perfectly preserved, but she insisted with absolute certainty that the body housing those memories was not the one she was born with. Something had changed during those 4 minutes of death, something fundamental and irreversible. What makes Eleanor's case even more disturbing is what she claims happened during her cardiac arrest. She says she didn't see a tunnel of light or deceased relatives waiting for her. She traveled forward, far forward, to the year 2089. She describes a world almost unrecognizable. Coastal cities submerged beneath rising oceans. Synthetic bodies manufactured for consciousness transfer. Human minds uploaded into artificial vessels as routinely as we change clothes today. She says she witnessed this future with complete clarity, walked through its streets, spoke with its inhabitants. And then something pulled her back, but the return went wrong. Eleanor believes her original body is still in 2089. She thinks her consciousness was displaced during the journey back, and when it landed, it anchored to a biologically similar, but not identical vessel. The body she inhabits now, she says, belonged to someone else, and she has no idea where that person's consciousness went. Did it get pushed out? Did it travel forward to take her place? Eleanor doesn't know. She only knows that every time she looks in the mirror, she sees an imposter. Colleagues describe her as still brilliant, still capable, still one of the finest surgeons in the country. But there's something different about her now, a distance in her eyes, a hesitation when she speaks her own name. She once told an interviewer that she feels like a tenant in a house she doesn't own, constantly waiting for the real owner to come home and demand the keys back. Dr. Eleanor Vance still practices medicine. She still saves lives. But she does so with hands she doesn't recognize, in a body she insists isn't hers. She says the woman who died on that operating room floor in 2011 never truly came back. Someone else did, someone wearing Eleanor's face, living Eleanor's life, but carrying memories of a future that hasn't happened yet. And every single day, she looks in the mirror and wonders who's really staring back. Imagine you and your identical twin are driving through a storm when lightning strikes your car. You black out for 72 hours. When you wake up, you're fine, but your twin has changed. She carries 14 years of memories from a future that never happened. She describes disasters that didn't occur, people who didn't die, a world that doesn't exist. And somehow, impossibly, she has physical scars from injuries she received in that other timeline. This is the mind-bending case of Sarah and Emma Linkfist, and it challenges everything we think we understand about parallel realities. In August 2007, Sarah and Emma Linkfist were 28-year-old identical twins living in a small town in rural Minnesota. They were inseparable, as twins often are, finishing each other's sentences, sharing each other's lives. On the evening of August 17th, they were driving home together from a family gathering when a severe thunderstorm rolled in without warning. The sky turned green, the wind shook their car, and then a bolt of lightning struck the vehicle directly, sending it spinning off the road into a ditch. Sarah remembers the impact and then waking up in a hospital bed 72 hours later. Doctors told her she had been unconscious, but stable. Her sister Emma was in the next room, also unconscious, also stable. Physically, they were both fine. But when Emma finally opened her eyes, Sarah realized immediately that something was terribly wrong. Emma didn't recognize the hospital. She didn't recognize the year. She kept asking about the evacuation, about the refugees, about whether the contamination had spread. She described in horrifying detail a chemical plant explosion that had devastated their town in 2015. She talked about the aftermath, the government response, the mass relocations. She described burying their mother in 2018 after she developed respiratory failure from toxic exposure. She spoke about 14 years of life that Sarah had never experienced. To Emma, those 72 hours of unconsciousness had been 14 years of living in an alternate future. But here's where the case becomes truly disturbing. During those 72 hours, while both twins lay unconscious in their hospital beds, Sarah watched wounds appear on Emma's body. Cuts materialized on her forearms. Bruises bloomed across her ribs. A long, jagged scar formed slowly across her left shoulder. There was no external cause, no medical explanation. The injuries simply manifested as if inflicted by invisible hands. When Emma woke up, She recognized the scars immediately. She said they were from a collapsed building in 2019, shrapnel from the explosion's aftermath. She could describe the exact moment each wound occurred in her memory of the alternate timeline. The scars matched her descriptions perfectly. But those events never happened, not in our reality. Medical professionals documented everything but could explain nothing. The wounds were real, the tissue damage was genuine, but the cause existed only in Emma's memory of a future that never occurred in this timeline. Somehow, her body had recorded injuries from events that only she experienced. What makes this case even more unsettling is what Emma knew. During psychiatric evaluation, she mentioned details about the chemical plant that were not public knowledge in 2007. Structural weaknesses, safety violations, storage protocols. When investigators later examined the plant in 2019 following a routine safety audit, they discovered those exact issues. Emma had described problems that weren't documented until 12 years after her experience. Did Emma's consciousness actually travel to a parallel timeline during those 72 hours? Did she live through 14 years in an alternate reality where that explosion actually happened? And if so, how did her body in this timeline record the physical damage from events that never occurred here? Sarah says she watched her identical twin become a stranger over the course of 3 days. The woman who woke up looked like Emma, sounded like Emma, but carried the weight of a lifetime Sarah never shared. Emma still has the scars. She still remembers the future that wasn't. And she still wonders every single day, which version of reality is the real one? We're only halfway through these cases, and trust me, the stories ahead make everything you've heard so far look like a warm-up. Subscribe now so you don't miss the most disturbing one yet. Because what's coming next will change how you see time forever. What if a child suddenly began speaking a language that has been dead for over 4,000 years? What if she claimed to be someone who lived in ancient Mesopotamia, a high priestess who served gods that haven't been worshipped for millennia? And what if linguistic experts confirmed that her speech was grammatically perfect, historically accurate, and impossible for any modern person to fabricate? This is the extraordinary case of Anna Nicollescu, a 7-year-old girl from Romania who claims her mind is over 4,300 years old. And her story is one of the most compelling arguments for consciousness displacement ever documented. In the winter of 2014, Anna Nicollescu was a normal child living with her family in a small village in rural Romania. She loved dolls. She played in the fields behind her house. She had just started learning to read. Then, in early February, she developed a severe fever that kept her bedridden for nearly a week. Doctors diagnosed it as a viral infection. They expected a full recovery. But when the fever finally broke, Anna woke up speaking words her parents had never heard before. At first, they thought she was babbling, perhaps playing some kind of game. But Anna was distressed. She kept repeating phrases with urgency, pointing at objects and becoming frustrated when no one understood. Her mother recorded the sounds on her phone and sent them to a linguistics professor at the University of Bucharest, hoping for some explanation. The response she received changed everything. The professor identified the language as Sumerian, not just fragments or random syllables, but structured fluent Sumerian with accurate grammar and vocabulary, consistent with texts dating back to approximately 2300 BC. Anna was speaking a language that no human being had used conversationally for over 4 millennia. When researchers arrived to study her, Anna made a claim that sent chills down their spines. She said her name was not Anna. Her name was Enheduanna, and she was a high priestess of the moon god Nana in the ancient city of Enheduanna is a real historical figure, widely considered the world's first known author. She composed hymns and poems that have survived on clay tablets for thousands of years. She served in one of the most powerful religious positions in Sumerian society, and according to a 7-year-old girl in modern Romania, she was still alive, trapped in a body she didn't recognize, in a world she couldn't comprehend. Anna, or Enheduanna, described the temples of Ur with architectural details that matched archaeological discoveries. She recited fragments of prayers that corresponded to translated texts. She spoke about political events, religious ceremonies, and daily rituals with a consistency that baffled experts. When shown photographs of Mesopotamian artifacts, she identified their purposes correctly. sometimes providing information that researchers had to verify through academic sources. But what struck observers most was her terror. She didn't understand cars, which she called screaming metal beasts. Electricity horrified her. She described light bulbs as captured lightning and refused to enter rooms where they were turned on. She begged to go home, to return to her temple, to see the ziggurat that she remembered standing beneath. When told that Ur was now ruins in modern Iraq, she wept for hours. Researchers theorized that Anna's consciousness had somehow been displaced by a mind from the ancient past. During her fever, something had occurred that allowed Enheduanna's awareness to anchor itself to Anna's body. The child's original consciousness may have been pushed aside, suppressed, or perhaps even transported elsewhere. No one knows for certain. Anna is now 17 years old. She has learned to function in the modern world, but she still slips into Sumerian when distressed. She still insists she is Enheduanna, and she still describes, with heartbreaking clarity, a world of temples and gods and desert winds that exists only in archaeological records and her own ancient memory. She once told a researcher that this body feels like a tomb. She said she was buried alive in the future, surrounded by miracles she cannot understand and horrors she cannot escape. Her mind is over 4,000 years old. Her body just turned 17, and she doesn't know if she will ever find her way back home. What if traveling through time didn't just change when you exist, but changed how your body reacts to reality itself? What if you returned from a temporal displacement and discovered that your own timeline had become toxic to you? That objects, foods, even people that didn't exist before you left now trigger violent physical reactions? This is the horrifying case of Robert Chen, a man whose body has declared war on everything that happened after he disappeared. And his story suggests that time travel might come with a price nobody ever imagined. In September 2018, Robert Chen was a 45-year-old accountant working in a high-rise office building in Melbourne, Australia. He was ordinary in every way: a steady job, a loving wife, a comfortable routine. On the morning of September 28th, a 6.0 magnitude earthquake struck the city without warning. Buildings swayed, glass shattered, and Robert, who was standing near a stairwell on the 14th floor, felt the ground give way beneath him. He remembers falling. He remembers the sensation of his stomach dropping. And then, everything went white. When Robert opened his eyes, he was lying in the rubble of the same building, surrounded by emergency responders. They told him he had been missing for 72 hours. Search teams had combed the wreckage multiple times without finding him. There was no pocket where he could have survived, no space where a human body could have remained hidden. Yet, there he was, completely uninjured, as if he had simply materialized among the debris. Robert couldn't explain where he had been. To him, no time had passed at all. He remembered falling, then waking up. The 72 hours in between were a complete blank. Doctors attributed his memory gap to trauma. His family was just grateful he was alive. Everyone assumed life would return to normal. It didn't. Within 3 weeks of his return, Robert began experiencing severe allergic reactions. They started small: a rash after touching his neighbor's new car, hives after eating at a restaurant that had opened earlier that month, difficulty breathing in his co-worker's office after she installed a new desk. At first, the reactions seemed random, but Robert noticed a pattern that terrified him. Everything he reacted to had come into existence after September 28, 2018. His body was rejecting anything manufactured, grown, or created after the moment of his disappearance. New foods caused anaphylaxis. New fabrics triggered contact dermatitis. New construction materials made him violently ill. Even certain people caused reactions. A colleague hired in October 2018 made Robert's skin burn just by standing nearby. A neighbor's baby, born in December of that year, caused his throat to swell when he held her. Allergists were baffled. The reactions were genuine and measurable, but the trigger pattern made no medical sense. How could a human body distinguish between objects based on their date of manufacture? How could immune responses target chronology? There was no biological mechanism to explain it. Robert now lives in a carefully controlled environment. His home contains only objects dated before September 2018. His food is sourced from preserved stocks with verified production dates. He cannot watch new movies, read new books, or interact with anyone who entered his life after his displacement. His wife thankfully existed before Researchers who studied Robert's case theorized that his body's immune system became synchronized to a specific temporal position during his unexplained 72-hour absence. When he returned, his biology remained anchored to September 2018, while the rest of the world moved forward. His immune system now treats post-displacement reality as foreign material, attacking it the way it would attack a virus or infection. Robert Chen is technically alive in 2024, but he cannot touch the present. He cannot eat the present. He cannot breathe the air of rooms containing objects the present has produced. Robert Chen is technically alive in 2024, but he cannot touch the present. He cannot eat the present. He cannot breathe the air of rooms containing objects the present has produced. His timeline has become poison. His own future has become an allergen. He once described his condition as being allergic to tomorrow. Every day that passes creates more things he cannot survive. His body is a refugee from a moment that no longer exists, trapped in a world that keeps moving further away from the only time he can tolerate. Imagine waking up every morning with no memory of who you are, where you came from, or anything that happened yesterday. Now imagine that same mind can describe, in perfect detail, events that will happen tomorrow. You remember nothing from the past, but you remember everything from the future. This is the haunting case of Yuki Tanaka, a woman whose consciousness flows backward through time while her body moves forward, and her story is one of the most scientifically baffling examples of temporal displacement ever recorded. In March 2016, a woman was found wandering the streets of Osaka, Japan. She was disoriented, frightened, and completely unable to recall her own name. She had no identification, no memory of family, friends, or personal history. Police brought her to a hospital where doctors diagnosed her with severe retrograde amnesia. Her entire past had been erased. She was a blank slate, a woman without a story. But Yuki Tanaka, as she would eventually be named by hospital staff, was not ordinary amnesia patient. Because while she couldn't remember a single moment from her past, she could describe the future with terrifying accuracy. It started on her second day in the hospital. She told a nurse not to take the elevator that afternoon because it would get stuck between floors. The nurse ignored her. The elevator malfunctioned at 3:47 p.m., trapping 4 people for 2 hours. The next morning, Yuki described a kitchen fire that would break out in the hospital cafeteria. Staff dismissed it as confusion. The fire started at noon, exactly as she had described. Doctors began documenting her predictions. Over the following weeks, Yuki accurately described car accidents before they happened, patient complications before they manifested, even weather patterns before meteorologists detected them. Her accuracy rate was extraordinary. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't reading subtle cues. She was remembering events that hadn't occurred yet. Neurological testing revealed something unprecedented. Yuki's episodic memory, the part of the brain that stores personal experiences, appeared to function in reverse. When researchers showed her photographs from earlier that day, she couldn't recall seeing them, but when asked what she would have for dinner that evening, she could describe the meal in complete detail, including a spilled glass of water that would happen at exactly 6:23 p.m. She described her condition as falling backward through time. Tomorrow feels like yesterday to me, she explained. I wake up remembering things that haven't happened, and by the time they do happen, I've already forgotten. The implications are staggering. Yuki experiences the future as memory, and the present as confusion. Yesterday literally doesn't exist for her. Every morning, she wakes with no knowledge of who she is or how she got there. But she carries vivid recollections of events that won't occur until hours or days later. Her consciousness is temporally inverted, perceiving time in the opposite direction from everyone around her. Researchers theorize that something catastrophic happened to Yuki before she was found in 2016, an event so traumatic that it fundamentally altered how her brain processes temporal information. But Yuki herself cannot explain it. She doesn't remember the cause because it exists in her past, a direction her mind can no longer access. She only remembers what comes next. The most disturbing aspect of Yuki's condition is what she has already seen. In 2019, she described her own death to researchers. She provided the date, the location, and the circumstances with the same calm precision she uses for all her predictions. She knows exactly how her life will end. She remembers it as clearly as you remember what you had for breakfast this morning, and she says she is not afraid of dying. She's afraid of forgetting how to live. Yuki Tanaka exists in a state of perpetual present tense, disconnected from her past, burdened with knowledge of her future. Every day she wakes up as a stranger to herself, carrying memories of tomorrows she cannot prevent and yesterdays she cannot recall. Her mind moves backward while her body moves forward, and she is trapped in the space between, watching her own life unfold in a direction she can never follow. And now, we arrive at the most chilling case of all. Imagine standing in front of a mirror and seeing yourself, but not as you are right now. Instead, you see yourself as you will be tomorrow. Every cut, every bruise, every injury appears in your reflection exactly 24 hours before it happens to your actual body. You watch wounds form on your mirror image and know with absolute certainty that tomorrow, those same wounds will open on your flesh. This is the terrifying reality of Eric Lingren, a man whose reflection exists one day ahead of his body. And his story is the most disturbing account of temporal displacement we've ever encountered. In January 2020, Eric Lingren was a 36-year-old software engineer living in Stockholm, Sweden. He was rational, methodical, and deeply skeptical of anything supernatural. Then, on a frozen winter morning, his car hit a patch of black ice and slammed into a concrete barrier at 70 kilometers per hour. He was rushed to the hospital with multiple fractures, deep lacerations, and severe internal bruising. He spent 3 days in intensive care before finally stabilizing. When he woke up, a nurse handed him a small mirror so he could see his face. What he saw made his blood run cold. His reflection showed no injuries. The face staring back at him was clean, unmarked, completely healed. But Eric's actual face, the one he could feel with his bandaged hands, was swollen, cut, and covered in bruises. He assumed the mirror was defective. He asked for another one. Same result. His reflection looked perfect while his body was broken. Over the following days, Eric watched in horror as wounds slowly began appearing on his reflection. Cuts materialized on the mirror image's cheeks. Bruises bloomed across its forehead. The injuries emerged gradually, exactly matching the wounds on Eric's real face, but delayed by precisely 24 hours. His reflection was showing him his own injuries one day after they had already happened to his body. When Eric was finally discharged, he began documenting everything. He discovered the phenomenon worked in both directions. If he looked in the mirror and saw a new wound on his reflection that didn't exist on his body, that exact wound would appear on his physical form exactly 24 hours later. His reflection wasn't just delayed, it was ahead. It was showing him tomorrow. He tested it obsessively. He would examine his reflection each morning, photograph any marks that didn't match his current body, and wait. Without fail, every single anomaly on his reflection would manifest on his actual body the following day. A scratch on his reflection's hand meant a scratch on his real hand 24 hours later. A bruise on his reflection's arm guaranteed a bruise on his actual arm by the same time tomorrow. In March 2023, Eric looked in the mirror and saw something that stopped his heart. His reflection had a massive wound across its throat, a deep, jagged laceration that ran from ear to ear. Eric panicked. He locked himself in his apartment, refused to leave, refused to interact with anything that could possibly cause such an injury. It didn't matter. The next day, a gas explosion in his building sent shrapnel tearing through his front door. A piece of metal caught him across the neck, slicing his throat in the exact pattern he had seen in the mirror. He survived, barely, but he understood then that he could not escape what his reflection showed him. The future was already written on the glass. Eric now checks his reflection every morning with the dread of a condemned man reading his own death warrant. He has seen himself with injuries that haven't happened yet. He has seen himself looking decades older than he is now. He has seen things he refuses to describe to researchers, images so disturbing that he simply shakes his head and walks away when asked. Recently, an interviewer asked Eric what he saw the last time he looked in the mirror. His face went pale, his hands trembled. And after a long silence, he said only this: "I finally saw how this ends." Eric Lindgren knows his own future. His reflection has already shown him. And whatever he saw, he carries it with him every single day, watching the clock tick toward a moment his mirror revealed long ago. What if time travel doesn't mean you move through time, but time moves through you? These 10 people didn't just witness impossible events. They became impossible events. their minds displaced, their bodies betraying them, their reflections showing futures they cannot escape. So, we leave you with this question. If you looked in the mirror tomorrow and saw someone else staring back, would you even know? Subscribe now so you never miss what's next. And maybe check your reflection, just in case.